The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today. So, Dalton, welcome back to the journey. I know this is going to be a little bit shorter episode, but I wanted to talk about the idea of transformation, but talk about it of how, from a wrestling coach, from the sport of wrestling, how does the opportunity of transformation, how does that platform of the wrestling room, of wrestling, the sport of wrestling itself, how does that allow for transformation to happen? So maybe just start off with when you think of transformation and one of your athletes transforming throughout the year, what comes to mind when you think of that?
First thing that comes to mind, obviously, is the idea of goals, right? Like, goals are becoming something that you aren't already, right? It's achievement. You have goals oftentimes in the form of objects, right? You want to accomplish a certain thing, right? One thing I did this year with the goal sheet is, who do you have to become in order to accomplish that thing, to get people to start thinking about that. But when it comes to transformation inside the sport, I think those two things are at the origin, right? You want to reach something that you haven't reached before, and then through that process you have to become somebody who you aren't currently, because if you were that person currently, you would have already possessed that thing in which you're chasing.
Right.
So I think that's the cool thing about sports, or a lot of things in general, right? All goal setting, I think, kind of starts there. Uniquely about wrestling is it's set up. I mean, the activity itself almost guarantees certain setbacks. So it's like it's primed for the process of transformation, because it's not something that is going to come without that failure periodically along the way. The doubt, the questions, the fear from how other people are doing, and then you have to kind of become matched up with them soon, and their goals are to get what you want and your goals are set. So it's like, you're questioning yourself whether or not you did the things that you were supposed to do, or at that point you're looking at the things that you didn't do and realizing the fear sets in even higher there. So,
well, I think the idea of starting off with a language, right, of setting a goal, whatever that goal is for that particular person, and that really the process to achieving that goal, or the journey of achieving that goal, is really where transformation can happen, because we can accomplish the goal but not transform.
Yeah.
But let's say if the goal is to win conference, or the goal is to go downstate and place in the top 4 in the state, you can have a transformational experience on the journey to that without accomplishing winning conference or going downstate and placing in the top 4. Or you could accomplish that, but you're still the same person.
Yeah.
And I think that is difficult for sometimes. I know for me as an athlete, when I was a student athlete, I don't think I got that. I understood that at that time, and I did begin starting to understand that later on when my kids were playing sports, that it was less about the outcome, more about who they were becoming on the journey.
Yeah, I think a lot of the fact that what you're talking about, when people don't transform on their accomplishments, I guess I would be curious, like, were those goals or accomplishments that they set out to achieve, like, were they audacious? Were they things that require you to go out of your comfort zone, right? And I think that almost is the guarantee that, if somebody tells me that they want to win high school state and they haven't already done so, I mean, that's an audacious goal.
Yeah.
So knowing how difficult that road is, that causes that level of uncomfortable. I mean, just by calling out that goal is calling yourself to become somebody that you're not.
Right.
So I think a lot of it has to do with making audacious goals, then being honest with yourself about where you are in the spectrum of accomplishing that goal, and then having the courage to actually step into that process.
Yeah. When I think of if someone comes back and let's say they're a returning champion, and so now the expectation is for them to win a second time, or the person who has that as a goal is to attain it for the first time, both of them have opportunity to stretch themselves out of their comfort zone. I know for me, when I won a national title, that journey to winning that national title, I felt like I was in this spiritual zone where I was just doing what I needed to do. There was not a lot of pressure. I mean, I wanted to place in the top 5, and I just trained as hard as I could and do everything I could do right. But then the following year, when I was going for my second national title, now there was not just winning, but not losing. And so there was that added element that at a young age, 19, I didn't even know how to verbalize that to my coach at the time. But I wish I would have verbalized it to him, that I had this added burden of not losing, where the year before it was just about doing my best to see where I could win. So, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate that even at the time, hence why I didn't probably tell anybody. But it was definitely a lesson that I learned later on by going through that experience and not voicing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting too, because I'm still trying to figure this out, at least how to get athletes to have the perspective that somebody. I don't think you can teach perspective. It's really hard to showcase somebody something, but I think you can talk about it enough that it can start to resonate. But I was thinking about this the other day about my job and what I'm doing as a coach and where I facilitate the growth aspect, right? And it's like, I think I'm an achiever, right? So the things that I do, I want to do the best that I can at. I want to try to reach my own personal potential in those endeavors. And it doesn't matter what it is. I want to apply myself at the highest level that I can apply myself. And when you're younger, sometimes you need those objects to chase because you don't know why you would do that otherwise. You don't know why you would seek uncomfortable situations for no reason, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I'm trying to think about it in a way of we're just achievers that are trying to get athletes on the developmental process as soon as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And then once you understand that there's a developmental process, that's when you let go of the pressure of achievement on certain objects, and more about applying yourself, looking at your behaviors, growing in every area, right? And just thinking about transformation as a constant process that you get to take. Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to ultimately express that or teach that, because I don't know if you can. I think there are people that want to achieve, and you can help give them perspective. But some people that aren't necessarily fired up to just do well, sometimes they need objects to get themselves in motion, whether it's, they need a good-looking physique for the beach or summer, right, as opposed to just being in good health or something.
Sure. Right.
But
well, and I think that that in itself kind of speaks to why does a person want what they want at that time, and it very well may be okay for that time period. It's kind of like an addiction work. A person, almost everybody who stops using substances, it's not their idea to stop. They want the pain to stop. They want whatever pain they're getting as a result of their addiction. They want that pain to stop. Either stop a divorce, stop legal consequences, stop losing employment, whatever. They want to stop some pain first. It's only after then being sober do they see the benefits of a clear thinking, what other aspects of sobriety then / recovery will bring to them. Yeah. But initially it almost is because of some type of bottom happens, because up until that point they're doing everything they can to continue the lifestyle and still maintain minimal consequences, right? And so, and I think that's what happens sometimes with athletes, right? So how can I get the goal without doing 100% of the work? How do I want the results, but I don't want the pain, or I don't want the discomfort, or I don't want to take the risk of learning a different move that makes me, be in a vulnerable position, or whatever that may be. I guess another thought that I had, I came across this just recently, or reminded of this concept again. It was something I've known about for a real long time, but this idea of initiation, and actually in this context, it was a spiritual context. So that in Christianity, they'll use baptism, especially adult baptism or young adult baptism, as the original intent for that was to be initiated and into that next stage of life. And in the Jewish tradition, when a boy is around 12 or so, there is a bar mitzvah, and so there is this initiation that happens. And in our culture today, there's not a lot of opportunities for older men, older individuals to initiate younger people, younger men into the process of knowing who they are. But this process of knowing who you are has to come with a death of who they thought they were before they came. And I think of like wrestling, and I think what keeps on popping in my mind is when stories of individuals that have been in the military that go through basic training, that it through the physical element of it, it strips away some of those mental perspective, some of that ego, some of those fears. It strips it away. First, it has to be physical. And then there's an opportunity for a teaching, either mentally or emotionally. What have you noticed? You're now coming to toward the last third of the season. Now, what have you noticed with your student athletes that come in from the beginning, that you have to element this process of, from a physical standpoint, first, one, conditioning, that's the rationale, or is it also to open up their minds to be able to teach them?
Yeah. Well, the initiation process, I think, is it's everything. It's more important than anything else, I think, when it comes to coaching and allowing for transformation to exist within coaching. Because, as a public school coach, right? So I have experience as a public school coach and as a private school coach. So at a private school, the initiation process starts almost immediately, because that's a child and a family making a financial and a strategic decision on putting themselves in a specific place because of opportunities or knowledge or whatever. You're choosing that over just finding yourself there, right? So the initiation process begins when, and not to mention, say if you're at a private school that is athletic, accomplish centered, like they're focused on achievement and accomplishment. Now you're going there because you have the goal to achieve something, right? So that initiation process allows you to be vulnerable earlier to criticism, to guidance, to pressure, right? To push them in certain endeavors, right? Training wise, growth wise, mentally, whatever it is. The initiation process allows that stuff to happen. At a public school where I'm at now, what's difficult is that initiation process doesn't exist naturally because of choosing to be a part of the program, right? People choose to be a part of wrestling or other sports at a public school for multiple reasons. It's not always just to achieve. Sometimes it's just to be a part of a team. Maybe it's because your friend went on it and they wanted to do it and they wanted you to be around, so right? Or it's because you've always done it and that's just what you think you're supposed to do during the winter season. So initially there is no initiation, right? It's very casual. But what's cool is I provide things like the goal setting sheets, right? That at the time they're not really they're not initiating anything, but they're giving information, they're creating their own context. So when they put down their goals and aspirations and how they want to achieve those things, right, that provides the framework for future vulnerability, right? Because now with the wrestling season, things don't go as planned, right? Like, it's a guarantee.
Yeah.
Almost guarantee. Even if it goes well, it's always guaranteed that it never goes to plan, right? So injuries, losses, struggling with academics or class, whatever it is.
Sickness.
There's always something that happens at the wrong time, right? And when those things happen, that's the opportunity that I have to now offer the initiation process, right? Are you ready to listen, right? Are you really asking for advice, or are you just hoping that it makes you feel good and then you'll move on? And if it doesn't, then you won't listen to it, right? So that's where the real Mr. Miyagi opportunity comes, because you have to hold space until those things happen, and then that's when you can start the initiation process. So personally, in this season, everybody's very different, but you can start to see certain individuals listen a little bit, right? I've had kids reach out to me and say, hey, so one of our kids is really motivated, really disciplined, and athletically skilled. So now another athlete reached out to me and said, hey, I really want to train with him every day. I won't be lazy. I'll really work hard, right? And that's initiation, right? That's expressing that, one, vulnerability, and then two, that understanding of where they have to go in order to do well in the sport. So there's been some opportunities to come throughout the season.
Well, and I think that in the transformative process and the initiation process, even though I do think there is an element of that you're going to go through, similar to like when we talked about the hero's journey, we're going to go through it more than once multiple times in our lifetime. Yeah. The initiation is going to be different when we're at a different crossroad in our life, and I think and I don't know for sure, but I think there's going to be an accumulative effect, building upon itself as we go. I think of like the core of what did initiation mean. Well, it was the blessing from something greater than ourself. Maybe that was an older male for boys. Maybe that was via a vision. Maybe that was via a process of moving from boyhood to manhood. But it was recognizing that I've now moved through this process of I'm no longer what I was before this started. I'm now something else, and it's through this obstacle, it's through this discomfort, it's through this stretching that I've now have a different perspective. And I think you're right when you said earlier, it's hard to change someone's perspective, but I think what we can do is we can set up space, set up a container in which to see what happens, and then because then it's about facilitating that. And then I was just talking with my son the other day about something that I had said to him a couple weeks ago and didn't recognize the impact that it must clearly have had on him, because he came back to me and said, what'd you really mean by that? And he wanted to have a further conversation about some observation, some comment that I made, and so I don't think I fully recognized the blessing that was a couple weeks ago when I was making that comment fully. I think that there was definitely an element to that I knew that's what was going on, but it came out, so it was more like a spiritual moment. It just came out. There was no thinking I'm going to do it this time or any of that type of stuff. And I think there's many times in coaching, especially because of the physicality of it and the vulnerability that comes and the openness that comes with athletes because of the physical component. Like you said, there's always a risk in wrestling that you're going to make a mistake. You're not going to do something right. And that's okay, because making a mistake isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's something to learn from. It's something to go, okay, what happened? What happened when you did that? It's not the end. And I think that's part of the transformational experience as well, is to recognize that, yes, it's extremely important to have goals, but don't get so fixated that the outcome of that goal is everything. Yeah. Right? It's that tension between the goal needs to be everything, but then at the same time, it also needs to be not everything.
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's, I think as you talk about having the container, I think the container itself is extremely important. And like the idea that I think too many people take those containers for granted because, as you get older, some people won't change because their identity is so trapped, right? After 25 years old, 30 years old, your prefrontal cortex is kind of fixed, right? And so the idea of resetting your awareness around your reality is very difficult. And so I think I see a lot of people that are I want to say middle-aged, but that's not middle-aged, but anywhere in their 30s and up, and they almost feel as if it's over with, whether it's over with meaning what they think they're good at, what they think they are supposed to do, how the world is supposed to operate, and so then they get kind of stuck. And I think the cool thing about sports is it's that container that if taken seriously, and I don't mean serious only, like serious meaning the people that operate it have to have the perspective that this is a container for other things. But that doesn't mean that you conflate that down to not caring about it, right? I think I brought this up before, but I've talked about it a lot lately with the idea of the ancient Greek philosophy. There's the virtue of arete. Arete was the highest form of virtue, and that was personal excellence. And like the pursuit of personal excellence was the thing that led you to eudaimonia, and eudaimonia was happiness. So this understanding that you can create containers of how to work out problems, how to achieve, how to pursue, how to deal with setback, how to deal with success, how to constantly seek the next level of yourself, right? And sports, I mean, as a child growing up, it's such a great opportunity because it's physical as much as it is mental. So you're using your entire vehicle of the human, as opposed to just applying yourself in an academic venture or some other creative outlet that doesn't apply. Sports, I mean, we talked about this a lot, but sports and art are two great components to really, because I mean, everybody can get better. Like there is progress for every person, and it's like, because that's true no matter what, that's literally true for everybody, even people with disabilities. Right, guys, there's Anthony Robles won an NCAA title with one leg, and so like even people with this, everybody has the ability to seek progress in the mind and the body and the skill that they're trying to go after. So I think it's great and it's important. I think society, we need to talk about it more, because all of the problems repeat themselves, right? Whether it's infidelity in relationships, infidelity or just lying, business, relations, right? Like just not having integrity. Patterns repeat themselves, and it's oftentimes because they haven't gone through it before. Right. And we could get people to go through it before those moments arise, then great.
Well, I think that idea, so it's interesting, your observation of you come across some individuals that appear to be stuck, and their way of describing their stuckness is that they're settling, right? They are not taking on this idea of striving for personal excellence, because to strive for personal excellence is a dynamic process. There is no arrival point. It's constantly, it's much more of a circle than it is a straight line. In that idea that if I'm striving for personal excellence, it's kind of like, as a therapist, when I came to the position that I know that I don't know, I knew that I was in a better spot to help someone than I was earlier in my career when I thought that I knew. Now I know that I don't know. I just need to create a container and a space to walk with them, and we'll go from there. It's really hard to sell that to insurance companies because they're paying for that. But I realize that it is part of striving for that personal excellence. That what am I stretching myself to learn how to do? What am I stretching myself to do? And as you mentioned, to be able to be with young people and to create a space for them to go that they may not have at other areas, the classroom, their own home, to have somebody besides a family member, and sometimes not even a family member, believe in them and be willing to walk with them, even if it is only a 3 months or 4 months of their journey, I think is a huge opportunity. So, Dalton, I appreciate everything you do for the athletes in the Northern Illinois area, not only in the Belvedere area, but also the ones that you work with up in Whitewater, and the ones that either digitally hear about you through the School of Wrestling, and how you're impacting coaches to stretch them to create their own containers for that transformation and that initiation process. So thanks again for being with us, and after the season's over, we'll have you on again and have some reflections on that as well.
Yeah, I'll have a lot.
I imagine. All right.